Simone Rivers was standing in a billionaire's closet, wearing his dead daughter's shoes. Not because she was a thief, not because she was breaking into the mansion on purpose. She was here because she was looking for her, looking for a girl with a face that looked like her face, looking for answers to questions nobody would answer. The shoes were red, expensive red, the kind of red that costs more money than Simone had ever held in her hands at one time. They fit perfectly, like they were made for her feet, like they were waiting for her. Simone heard the footsteps before she could take the shoes off. They were heavy, deliberate, coming up the stairs, coming toward the closet, coming toward her. She froze, her heart stopped, her breath stopped, everything inside her stopped. A man appeared in the closet doorway. Tall, dark brown skin, expensive suit that fit like it was painted on his body. His dark eyes found her immediately, and when they did, his entire face changed. He didn't look angry. He didn't look like someone catching a burglar. He looked like someone seeing a ghost. "Oh my God," he whispered, his voice cracked. "Oh my God, who are you?" Simone's mouth went dry. She tried to speak, but nothing came out. She was standing in a dead girl's shoes in a billionaire's house, being looked at like she was impossible. "I can explain," Simone finally managed, her voice barely above a whisper. But the man wasn't listening. He was staring at her like he was seeing something beyond her, like he was looking into her eyes and seeing someone else, someone he'd been missing for a long time. "You look like," he started, but he couldn't finish. His eyes filled with tears. "You look exactly like." The door to the closet was still open. Escape was still possible, but Simone didn't run. She stood there in the dead girl's shoes, waiting to understand what was happening. Because something in those eyes told her that her whole life was about to change. Simone Rivers had been living in Sheffield for 3 weeks, and she still didn't know why she was there. She'd come to this city on impulse, using money she'd saved working 3 jobs in Birmingham. She'd packed a bag, bought a bus ticket, and arrived at the Sheffield station with nothing but a name and a strange feeling that wouldn't leave her alone. The name was Isabella Hartley, and the feeling was the certainty that this woman was connected to her somehow. Simone had been living in the foster care system her entire life, 25 years in and out of homes with no biological family she could find, no real answers about where she came from. The social workers had told her all they knew. She was found abandoned at a hospital in London when she was 6 months old. There were no notes, no context, no family to claim her. But 6 months ago, Simone had seen a face online that looked exactly like her face. The woman was in a magazine article about a billionaire's tragic loss. The headline read, "Marcus Hartley's beloved daughter Isabella dies in accident at 25. Simone had stared at the photo for hours. The woman in the photo had her eyes, her nose, the same shape of her face, the same smile. It was like looking at an older version of herself. That's when Simone knew she had to find Sheffield, because Marcus Hartley, the billionaire, lived in Sheffield, and his daughter, the daughter who looked exactly like Simone, had lived there too. Simone had found a small flat on the edge of the city, in a neighborhood that wasn't fancy but wasn't dangerous. She worked at a cafe, serving coffee to people who didn't know her and didn't care to ask questions. At night, she would search online for information about Marcus Hartley, about Isabella, about why Simone's face looked like a dead girl's face. And that's how she'd found the address of the Hartley mansion. It was a massive house, stone and glass and windows that showed off wealth that Simone couldn't even fathom. It sat on acres of manicured green space on the edge of Sheffield, away from the city, isolated and protected. Simone had driven past it a dozen times. She'd walked past it. She'd stood across the street staring at it like she was trying to see through the walls to find answers. But she'd never gone inside, until today. The gate to the Hartley mansion was open. Simone didn't plan to go in. She was just driving past like she did sometimes when she saw that the gate was standing wide open. No security guard, no alarm visible, no reason to think she couldn't just walk in. She parked her car on the street and approached the gate carefully. Her heart was pounding. Her palms were sweating. She was about to trespass on a billionaire's property, and she knew it was illegal. But something pulled her forward, some force stronger than sense, some need stronger than fear. She walked up the long driveway, past the perfectly maintained gardens, past the fountain that probably cost more than her entire net worth. The house loomed in front of her, all glass and stone and money. A side door was open, a service entrance probably, the kind of door that workers used to bring in groceries and cleaning supplies, the kind of door that nobody was guarding because why would they need to guard a door when they had the gate? Simone went inside. The house was silent, massive, empty. She walked through corridors that seemed to stretch forever, past rooms bigger than the entire flat she lived in. Her footsteps echoed on marble floors. She was terrified and exhilarated at the same time. She was looking for something, some connection, some explanation, some sign that she belonged here. That's when she heard the crying. It was coming from upstairs, a soft sound, a sound of grief, the sound of someone who'd been crying for so long that crying was just part of living now. Simone followed the sound up a grand staircase, through more corridors, toward a door that was partially open. Inside the door was a bedroom, a girl's bedroom, pink walls, posters of bands and actors, a wall of photographs showing a young woman with Simone's exact face, smiling at different stages of her life. And on the bed, sitting with his head in his hands, was a man crying. He was older, maybe late 50s, dark brown skin, the kind of face that showed it had once been handsome but was now lined with grief. He was wearing an expensive suit, but his tie was loose and his shirt was partially unbuttoned. He looked like he'd been in this room for days. When he heard Simone step inside, he looked up. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Him, seeing a ghost that looked like his dead daughter. Her, seeing a man who might be her missing family. "I'm sorry," Simone said, because she didn't know what else to say. "I didn't mean to, I was looking for." The man stood up. "Who are you?" he demanded. "How did you get in here?" "I came through the side door," Simone said. "I know I shouldn't have, I'm sorry, I was just looking for something, someone." The man's face changed. His anger shifted to something else, something like recognition. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Simone," she said, "Simone Rivers." The man's face went pale. He reached out to steady himself on the dresser. "How old are you?" he asked. 25, Simone said. "Why?" "Oh my God," the man whispered. He sat down on the bed like his legs couldn't hold him up anymore. "Oh my God, you're 25. Simone didn't understand what was happening, but something in her gut was telling her that this moment was important, that her whole life had led to this moment. "Do you know me?" she asked. The man looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. "I think I do," he said. "I think I might have been looking for you for 25 years. The man's name was Marcus Hartley, though he didn't tell her that right away. First, he took her to the kitchen and made her tea like that was somehow important in the middle of whatever this moment was. Then he sat across from her at a massive dining table and told her a story. He told her about his daughter Isabella, about how she was born 25 years ago to a woman he'd loved but couldn't marry because it was complicated, about how that woman had wanted to keep the baby, but then something happened, something tragic. He told her about how he'd come home one day and found his daughter missing, gone, vanished, and the mother, Isabella's mother, also gone. No notes, no explanations, just gone. He'd spent years searching. He'd hired private investigators. He'd spent millions of pounds trying to find his daughter, but she was gone like she'd evaporated. Then, about a year ago, the impossible had happened. Isabella had come back. She'd found him online. They'd reconnected after all those years. They'd been rebuilding their relationship. And then she died in a car accident, 25 years old, just getting to know her father, just beginning her life. He'd been in her bedroom ever since, grieving the daughter he'd just gotten back. "But you look exactly like her," Marcus said, staring at Simone like she was impossible. "You have her eyes, her smile, the way you tilt your head when you're confused. That's exactly how Isabella looked." Simone's hands were shaking. Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "When were you born?" Marcus asked, his voice urgent. "Do you know your exact birth date?" "April 14, 1999, Simone said. "Why?" Marcus stood up. He was shaking. His face had gone white. "Isabella was born on April 14, 1999, he said. "She was born in London. Her mother took her and disappeared. I've never been able to find out where she went. What happened to the baby, if there was another?" He couldn't finish. He was overwhelmed. "You're saying," Simone started, but the words felt impossible. "You're saying I might be." "I think you might be my daughter," Marcus said. "I think there might have been two of you, twins maybe, and somehow you were separated. Somehow I only found out about Isabella." Simone's entire world tilted. Everything she thought she knew about herself suddenly wasn't real anymore. "That's insane," she said. "You don't know that I could just look like her. That's not impossible. Lots of people look alike." "Not this much," Marcus said. "Not with everything else being the same. The eyes, Simone. You have my eyes. I can see it now. You have my eyes." He left her in the kitchen while he went upstairs. When he came back, he was holding something. A pair of red shoes. Expensive. Beautiful. The kind of shoes that belonged in a closet that Simone could never afford. "These were Isabella's favorite shoes," Marcus said. "She wore them on the day she died. I've kept them because I couldn't let go. I couldn't accept that she was gone." He handed them to Simone. "Try them on," he said. Simone didn't know why she did it. It felt wrong. It felt like she was crossing some line, but she took off her shoes and put on the red ones. They fit perfectly, like they were made for her feet. Marcus watched her with tears streaming down his face. "I need to know if you're my daughter," he said. "I need to know for certain. There's a way to find out. A DNA test. It can tell us if we're related." Simone wanted to say no. She wanted to walk out and pretend this never happened. She wanted to go back to her cafe job and her small flat and her simple life, where she wasn't connected to anything or anyone. But she was also terrified, because part of her knew the truth before any test could tell her. Something in her DNA already recognized something in his DNA. "Okay," she said quietly, "let's do the test." The DNA test took 3 days. 3 days of Simone going to work at the cafe and then coming to the Hartley mansion. 3 days of Marcus showing her photos of Isabella. 3 days of her looking at a dead girl's face and recognizing her own face looking back. 3 days of getting to know a man who might be her father. Marcus told her everything. He told her about growing up poor in Sheffield, about building his business from nothing, about meeting Isabella's mother, a woman named Victoria, when he was young and ambitious and completely unprepared for love. He told her about how Victoria had gotten pregnant, how they'd talked about marriage but then decided they wanted different things, how they'd agreed to co-parent, but then Victoria had disappeared. He told her about Isabella coming back into his life a year ago and how it had felt like a gift, how it had felt like a second chance, and then losing her had felt like the cruelest thing that could ever happen. "When you walked into her bedroom, I thought I was losing my mind," Marcus said. He was sitting across from her in the same dining room, and they were drinking tea again, which seemed to be his way of processing emotion. "I thought grief was making me see things. I thought I was hallucinating my dead daughter coming back to haunt me." "I came looking for answers," Simone said. "I found a photo of Isabella online. She looked like me. I came to Sheffield because I needed to know why. I've been my whole life not knowing who I am or where I come from, and then I saw her face and suddenly everything made sense." "Did your mother ever tell you anything?" Marcus asked. "Anything about your biological family?" "No," Simone said. "I was in the foster system. I was found abandoned when I was a baby. There was nothing, no information, no way to trace where I came from." Marcus's face changed. Something dark crossed it. "I think I know where you came from," he said quietly. "I think your mother, our mother, took you and tried to disappear. I think she wanted to keep you away from me. I think that's why I never knew about you. That's why I only knew about Isabella." Simone didn't know how to feel about that. She'd never known her mother. She'd never known anyone who'd wanted to raise her. The idea that her biological mother had deliberately kept her away from her biological father was complicated and painful, and also somehow made sense. On the third day, Marcus received the DNA results. He opened the email with Simone sitting next to him. She could see his hands shaking as he read. "Positive," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. 99.9% match. You're my daughter, Simone. You're my daughter." Simone felt something break open inside her. She'd come to Sheffield looking for answers. She'd found them, but she wasn't prepared for what finding them would feel like. She was crying. Marcus was crying. They were both crying in this massive mansion in the face of this impossible truth. "I have a question," Simone said. Did she know about me?" Marcus looked at the email. He looked at her. "I don't know," he said. "When she came back into my life, she never mentioned knowing about you, but I also never thought to look for a second child. I didn't know I was missing anyone. I thought there was just Isabella." "What happened to our mother?" Simone asked. "Why did she take us and disappear?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "But I'm going to find out. I'm going to find out everything. Because you deserve to know your story. You deserve to know where you came from." Simone just discovered that the man whose daughter she looks identical to is actually her biological father. They've just confirmed it with a DNA test. But here's the thing. Simone was deliberately kept away from this man her entire life. Her biological mother took her and disappeared when she was a baby. She was put into the foster system and raised by strangers. Now Simone has to understand why. She has to find out what her mother was running from. She has to understand the truth about her own origin story. And Marcus has to explain to Simone what happened to their mother. He has to tell her about the life they could have had together and why it was taken away from them. Before you keep watching, make sure you hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell. This story is about to get even more complicated. This is where we discover the real truth. Leave a comment and tell me, do you think Simone's mother kept her away on purpose? Or was there a reason that will make us understand her actions? Let's continue the story. Marcus had been searching for answers to this question for 25 years. Now that his daughter Simone was sitting in his house, he realized he didn't have any answers to give her. He knew the basics of his story with Victoria. He knew that they'd been young. He knew that she'd gotten pregnant. He knew that they'd agreed to separate but co-parent. He knew that she'd disappeared, taking their daughter with her and leaving him with nothing but questions. What he didn't know was why. What he didn't know was where she'd gone. What he didn't know was how to explain to Simone that her entire existence had been a secret, that her mother had deliberately kept her away from him and from Isabella. "Tell me about her," Simone said, sitting on the couch in Marcus's living room. "Tell me about my mother." Marcus sat down across from her. "Her name was Victoria Mitchell," he said. "She was beautiful, smart. She wanted to be a musician. She wanted to travel the world. She wanted a life that was completely separate from Sheffield, separate from responsibility, separate from me." "Why did she get pregnant?" Simone asked. "If she wanted that kind of life, why would she get pregnant?" "It was an accident," Marcus said. "We were young, we were careless, and then suddenly there was a baby coming and everything changed." He paused, remembering. "We fought about it," he continued. "She wanted to end the pregnancy. I didn't. In the end, she decided to have the baby, but only if I agreed that I would let her leave, that I wouldn't try to keep her in Sheffield, that I would take care of the child while she went to pursue her dreams. And you agreed to that? Simone asked, her voice sharp. I did, Marcus said, because I was stupid and young and I thought she'd come back. I thought after she got it out of her system, she'd want to be a mother. She'd want to be with us. But she didn't come back, Simone said. No, Marcus said. She didn't. She left with Isabella when the baby was 6 months old. She left a note saying she was sorry, but she couldn't do it. She couldn't be a mother. She couldn't be the person I needed her to be. And she begged me not to try to find her. She said she needed to disappear. Simone stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at the Sheffield landscape stretching below the mansion. Did you not try to find her? She asked. I did, Marcus said, but she'd covered her tracks well. She'd taken money out of the account we shared. She'd left the country. I hired private investigators, but they couldn't find her. It was like she'd evaporated. And then what? Simone asked. And then you just moved on. You just accepted that you had a daughter you'd never see again. There was an edge to her voice now, a hurt that ran deep. No, Marcus said. I spent years trying to find her. Years, decades, but there was nothing, no trace. And then, about a year and a half ago, I got a message on my business website. He stood up. He walked to his office and came back with a printed email. It was from Isabella, he said. She said she'd finally convinced her mother to let her reach out to me. She said she wanted to meet her father. She said her mother was finally ready to explain what had happened. Simone took the email from him. She read Isabella's words, her sister's words. Did Victoria come with her? Simone asked. No, Marcus said. Isabella came alone. She was an adult by then. She was 24 years old. She had her own life. She wanted to know where she came from. She wanted to know me. And you never asked about me, Simone said. You never asked if there were other children. You never asked about me. Because I didn't know about you, Marcus said. His voice broke. I swear to you, Simone, I didn't know about you. As far as I knew, there was just Isabella. That's all Victoria ever told me about. That's all I had any reason to believe existed. Simone sat back down. She felt like her legs couldn't hold her up. So my mother had 2 daughters, she said slowly, and she only brought one of them back to find you. She only told you about one of us. Yes, Marcus said. Why? Simone demanded. Why would she do that? Why would she keep me hidden? Marcus was silent for a long moment. I don't know, he finally said, but I'm going to find out. I'm going to find Victoria, and I'm going to make her explain every single thing. Finding Victoria Mitchell turned out to be easier than Marcus expected. Because Victoria had been finding him all along. It started with the private investigator Marcus hired. Within 48 hours, the investigator had a lead. Victoria was in London. She'd been living there for 25 years. She'd built a life as a musician, exactly like she'd wanted to do. She'd recorded albums. She'd performed in concert halls. She'd lived the life she'd run away to live. But she'd also been watching Marcus, watching his business grow, watching his success. The investigator found social media accounts under fake names that followed Marcus's official accounts. He found evidence that she'd been tracking his life online, seeing what he was building, keeping tabs on him from a distance. She's been watching you, the investigator said. For 25 years, she's been watching you while you didn't know she existed. What about Isabella? Marcus asked. Did she know about me before she contacted me? According to our investigation, yes, the investigator said. Isabella knew about you her whole life. Victoria told her about you, but she told her not to contact you. The investigator's best guess is that Isabella reached out to you against her mother's wishes. Marcus looked at Simone when he told her this. Your mother deliberately kept me away from both of you, he said. And when Isabella decided she wanted to know you, she died before she could tell you about me, before she could tell you about Isabella. Simone didn't respond. She just stared at nothing. I'm going to London to find Victoria, Marcus said. I'm going to ask her why. I'm going to demand answers, and I want you to come with me. Victoria lived in a beautiful flat in North London, a musician's flat, with a piano by the window and instruments hanging on the walls. A flat that showed decades of a life lived well. She answered the door in person. She was older now, probably in her 50s, with gray streaking her hair and lines around her eyes. But Simone could see herself in her face. Simone could see her sister in her face. Victoria's face went pale when she saw Marcus, and then she saw Simone. Her knees literally buckled. She had to grab the doorframe to keep from falling. "Oh my God," Victoria whispered. "Oh my God, you found her." "You had 2 daughters," Marcus said, his voice cold. "You left with both of them. You disappeared with both of them, and then you only brought one back to meet me. I have to ask you, Victoria, why would you do that?" Victoria looked at Simone. Her dark eyes were full of tears. "I did what I thought was best," Victoria said. "I did what I thought would protect you both." "Protect us from what?" Simone asked. Her voice was surprisingly strong, considering she was looking at her biological mother for the first time in her life. "Protect us from our father, from knowing that we had a father. That seems like something we should have gotten to decide for ourselves." Victoria stepped back and gestured for them to come inside. They did, and she closed the door, shutting out the London street. "Sit down," she said. "I'll explain everything, but you deserve to know the full story. You deserve to understand why I made the choices I made." They sat in her living room, and Victoria told them a story that changed everything. She told them about how she and Marcus had been young and in love, but they'd wanted different things. She told them about the pregnancy and the hard decision to have the baby. She told them about the agreement that she would leave to pursue her dreams. "But then Isabella was born," Victoria said, looking at Simone. "And something happened inside me. I looked at her face and I fell in love so completely that I thought my heart would explode. I couldn't leave her. I couldn't pursue my dreams and abandon my baby. I was going to go back on the agreement. I was going to ask Marcus if we could make it work." She paused. "But then I got pregnant again," she continued. "A few months after Isabella was born, I didn't know I was pregnant. It was a shock. The pregnancy was difficult. I was so focused on Isabella and trying to navigate my relationship with Marcus and dealing with the fact that I was about to have another baby. I made mistakes. I made terrible mistakes." "What kind of mistakes?" Marcus asked quietly. "I borrowed money," Victoria said. "A lot of money, from the wrong people, from people who weren't patient about being repaid. I was desperate. I was trying to get my life together. I was trying to be a good mother and a good partner, and I borrowed money from criminals." She looked directly at Marcus. "When Simone was born, I had months to pay back what I owed. I couldn't do it. They came to me. They told me that if I didn't pay them back, they would take my daughter. They would take Isabella. I had a choice: run or lose my firstborn child to people who had no conscience." Tears were streaming down Victoria's face now. "I ran," she said. "I took both of you and I disappeared. I left the note for you, Marcus, because I needed you to understand that I couldn't stay, but I was also trying to protect you. These people were violent. I didn't want them coming after you, trying to leverage you against me." "Why did you only bring Isabella back?" Simone asked. Victoria looked at her daughter for a long moment. "Because I was protecting Simone," she said. "Even more than I was protecting Isabella. I took Simone to an adoption agency when she was 6 months old. I made sure they would place her far away from me, far away from anyone who might be looking for her. I made sure she would be safe." Simone stood up. She walked to the window and looked out at London. "You gave me away," she said. "You gave me away to protect me." "Yes," Victoria said. "I did, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done. Every single day of my life for 25 years I've thought about you. I've wondered where you were, if you were safe, if you were happy, if you were loved. I was in the foster system, Simone said, her voice cold. I was bounced around from home to home. Nobody wanted to keep me. I was alone my entire life because you decided to give me away. I'm sorry, Victoria said, and she sounded genuinely devastated. I am so deeply sorry, but I would make the same choice again, because the alternative was you being taken by people who would have hurt you. The alternative was you being used as leverage against me. The alternative was you growing up in fear and violence. What I did, it was wrong, but it was the best wrong choice I could make in an impossible situation. Simone just learned the truth about her mother. Victoria had 2 daughters and deliberately gave one away to protect her from criminals she'd borrowed money from. She kept Isabella and hid, building a new life in London while leaving Simone in the foster system. But here's what Simone's learning. Sometimes the people who hurt us do it out of love. Sometimes the wrong choices are made trying to do the right thing. Now Simone has to decide. Can she forgive her mother for this? Can she understand that Victoria was trapped in an impossible situation and did the best she could? And what about Marcus? He's just discovered that he had 2 daughters, and one of them was deliberately kept from him for 25 years. How will he handle knowing that his daughter, Simone, spent her entire life in the foster system while Isabella got to know him? You have to keep watching to see if this fractured family can come back together, to see if Simone can find her place in this world now that she knows the truth, to see if they can build something real from all the lies. This story is about to reach its emotional climax. You don't want to miss what happens next. Leave a comment and tell me, would you have made the same choice as Victoria? What would you have done? Now let's continue the story. Time moved differently after the truth came out. Simone stayed in London for a week, living in Victoria's flat, getting to know the woman who'd given her away. It was complicated. It was painful, but it was also necessary. Victoria told her stories about her life, about the music career she'd built, about watching Isabella grow up, about the constant fear that the people she'd run from would find them, about the day she finally felt safe enough to reach out to Marcus. When Isabella wanted to contact you, I was terrified, Victoria said. I was terrified that if she met you, if she told you about Simone, that somehow you would find your way to me and the cycle would start all over again. But Isabella was an adult. She had the right to make her own choices, so I let her meet you. And then she died, Simone said quietly. And then she died, Victoria echoed. And I realized that keeping secrets, running from the past, trying to hide, none of it had protected my daughter from the thing that actually hurt her. A car accident. Something random and terrible and unavoidable. Simone listened to Victoria's story and something inside her began to shift. She'd come to Sheffield looking for answers. She'd found her father. She'd found her mother. She'd found the truth about her sister. But the truth was complicated. It was messy. It was human. Simone went back to Sheffield with Marcus. Victoria came too, nervous and hesitant, but determined to finally face the man she'd run away from 25 years ago. They stood in the Hartley mansion, the place Simone had broken into a week ago, and the 3 of them tried to figure out how to be a family when they'd never had the chance to learn how. I don't know what to call you, Simone said to Marcus. I can't just call you Dad. I don't know you. Then don't, Marcus said gently. Call me Marcus. We'll figure it out as we go. There's no right way to do this. We're making it up as we go. Victoria was quieter. She kept looking at Simone like she was trying to memorize her face, trying to make up for 25 years of missing her. I want you to know something, Victoria said to Simone. I want you to know that I've followed your life since I gave you up. I couldn't find you legally, but I found ways. I found records of which foster agencies were involved. I found some information about where you went. I knew you were alive. I knew you were safe. But I stayed away because I thought that was what you needed. It wasn't, Simone said, but I understand why you did it. And she did understand. It didn't make it right, but it made it human. Marcus had been Isabella's only heir. When she died, her entire estate had gone to him. It was a substantial amount of money, investments, property, things that represented decades of wealth accumulation. Marcus called a lawyer to his office. "I want to set up trust funds," he said. "One for Simone, one for Victoria. I want to make sure they're taken care of. I want to make sure they have security and options." Simone objected. She didn't want money from him. It felt too transactional, too much like she was being bought. But Marcus was firm. "You grew up in the foster system because of a choice I didn't even know was being made," he said. "You grew up without a father because your mother was protecting you from danger. You deserve to have options. You deserve to have security. Let me give you this." In the end, Simone accepted. Not because she needed the money, but because accepting it meant accepting that she belonged to this family, that she had roots, that she had a father who wanted to take care of her. A few months after Simone and Victoria came into Marcus's life, they held a memorial for Isabella. It was a small thing, just the three of them standing in the garden of the Hartley mansion with red flowers that matched Isabella's favorite shoes. "I've been thinking about Isabella," Simone said. "I've been thinking about how she was the bridge between us. She was the one who came looking for you, Marcus. She was the one who brought truth back into our family." "She would have loved to meet you," Marcus said to Simone. "I think I would have loved her too," Simone said. "From what you've told me, she sounds like someone who wasn't afraid to ask hard questions, someone who wanted to know the truth. I think we would have gotten along." They stood in silence for a moment, honoring the sister they'd never met, the daughter he'd just gotten back, the granddaughter Victoria had lost. Simone didn't leave Sheffield. She quit her job at the cafe, but not because she didn't need to work anymore. She quit because she had a new idea. She wanted to open her own cafe, her own business, something that belonged to her. Marcus offered to fund it. Victoria offered to help design it. And Simone found herself building something with her family for the first time in her life. The cafe opened on a cold Sheffield morning in the spring. It was called Isabella's, in honor of the sister Simone had never met but who had changed everything by having the courage to come looking for her father. On opening day, Simone stood behind the counter wearing the red shoes, the ones that had changed her life, the ones that had started this whole impossible journey. A customer came in, a woman she didn't know. "These are beautiful shoes," the woman said, nodding at Simone's feet. Simone looked down at the red shoes and smiled. "They are," she agreed. "They belong to my sister, and they changed my life." A year after Simone first broke into the Hartley mansion, they had Sunday dinner together. Simone cooked, Victoria brought wine, Marcus set the table. They were learning how to be a family. It was awkward sometimes, it was hard sometimes, but it was real. "I've been thinking about something," Simone said as they ate. "I've been thinking about how if Isabella hadn't had the courage to reach out to you, Marcus, we would have never known each other existed. If Victoria hadn't made the choice to protect me, I might have grown up in a different kind of danger. If I hadn't seen that photo of Isabella online and had that feeling that I needed to find Sheffield, none of this would have happened." "What's your point?" Marcus asked. "My point is that sometimes the most painful things in our lives lead us to exactly where we need to be," Simone said. "I spent 25 years in the foster system. I was alone. I was scared. I didn't have family, but all of that led me to this moment, to knowing you, to knowing her, to being part of something real." Victoria reached across the table and took Simone's hand. "I spent 25 years running," Victoria said. "I spent 25 years separated from my daughter, but I was also able to build a life. I was able to pursue my dreams. I was able to protect my children the best way I knew how. And now I get to have both of them in my life. I get to have a second chance." Marcus looked at both of them, the two most important women in his world, one he'd lost for 25 years, one he'd never known existed. I spent 25 years looking for answers, he said. I spent those years lonely. I spent those years grieving something I didn't even understand I was missing. But now I have a family. A real, complicated, beautiful family. And I wouldn't change a single thing, no matter how much pain it took to get here. Moral of this story. If you're watching this story, maybe you're wondering what the point is. Maybe you're wondering what lesson we're supposed to take from this. The lesson is this: families are complicated. Love is complicated. The people we're connected to by blood or by circumstance make choices that aren't always right, but that are always trying to protect something. Simone's mother gave her away to protect her from danger. Simone's father didn't know she existed, but when he found her, he opened his life to her completely. And Simone had to learn that love doesn't always look the way we think it should. Love is sometimes a sacrifice. Love is sometimes hiding. Love is sometimes the hard choice made with the best intentions. And family, real family, isn't always the people you're born to. It's the people who show up. It's the people who try. It's the people who are willing to work through the complicated stuff to get to something real on the other side. Simone could have stayed angry at her mother for abandoning her. She could have stayed resentful of her father for not knowing she existed. She could have rejected Victoria and Marcus and the whole complicated situation. But she didn't. She chose to try. She chose to understand. She chose to build something real with the family she'd been given, even though it came to her in the most unexpected way possible. And that choice, to try, to understand, to build, that's what made her whole. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in my next video.